Welcome to a new video series entitled Strategic Capitalism. I'm Richard Devaney from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College, and in this video series we'll be gaining insights about my latest book, Strategic Capitalism, New Economic Strategy for Winning the Capitalist Cold War. These short videos are interviews with senior executives and CEOs from a variety of industries talking about what it will take for America to win the capitalist Cold War. What does the United States need to do in order to improve our economy? How do we save manufacturing in the United States?
Well, I start with what does the United States need to do? I think the very simplest thing we need to contemplate as a society is the fact is we're living beyond our means. The government is. So the government is not taking in as much money as it is spending. In your household, in my household, that can't last in perpetuity, and it's not going to last in this country in perpetuity. So to me, at the very immediate stage, short term, today, right now, what we need to do for the government is raise revenues and lower spending. And if you look at the political parties, we've got one really focused on raising revenues, arguably the Democrats, and we've got one, the Republicans, really focused on cutting spending and not raising revenues. The fact is, I think you and I, everyday people, know we have to do both at the same time to get out of this mess. So why don't we just, forget the politics for a couple of days and say, let's raise taxes. People like me who've been fortunate and blessed in this society probably need to pay more taxes, and I understand that. We also need to cut some of these programs that just aren't sustainable, that we're there for a different day, in a different competitive set, if you will, if you think of your strategy role. The United States now, to move to the longer term, needs to change its business model in a new competitive world. We're not the top dog anymore, or maybe we are this decade. We're not going to be the top dog in the next decade the way things are playing out. So unless we decide we want to get competitive again, we want to work hard, we want to accept the challenge, we want to think about how we compete in the world, what we're doing today is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the short terms in terms of our deficit, and it's not sustainable for the long term in terms of our competitive power and advantage.
And rebuilding manufacturing in the United States, do you think that should be a goal, and how should we do it if you do?
I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be really tough. I guess I'm one of those people that believes there's certain comparative or competitive advantages. And there was a day when the United States was the manufacturers for the world, just as there was a day really when Great Britain or Europe were the manufacturers for the world. And manufacturing has moved through our society and now into Asian societies, largely because you have people coming off of the farm. The agrarian society is discovering capitalism and is going to work. Industrial revolution is alive and well in China today as we speak. And so people are coming off the farms and willing to work for relatively low wages. Our forefathers did that in this country. And we get concerned about labor abuse in China. I tell people, remember, did you read The Jungle when you were in high school? Remember, we had labor abuse in this country too, and it was a bad thing and we got over it. So we never want to do that in China. But what you do is you have people willing to work really, really hard, really long hours for relatively low wages in manufacturing jobs that we're just unwilling to do today. So if the cost of a manufacturing hour in this country might be somewhere in the neighborhood of $25. That is, for me to put a worker on a production line, all in could be in the neighborhood of $25. That same person working just as hard in an Asian country today might be a fifth or a tenth as expensive. So just the pure economics are going to make it very challenging for us to go back to manufacturing. Now the simple way to fix that, and some politicians think about this, is going back for us to become more protectionist. That is, don't let the imports come in. Add tariffs. Remember, we had tariffs before we had taxes in this country. Close our borders. Force the manufacturing to be done in here. The problem with that is, if you force the manufacturing to come in here, all we're going to do is raise the cost of those goods. So we, as consumers, will pay more for goods because they're made in the United States, a relatively high-cost manufacturing society. So I don't think there's an easy solution like close the borders and shut out the competition. Rather, I think we need to think of ourselves, and I think some smart strategy people like you are starting to contemplate this. How does America compete? And it may not be in a manufacturing job for job, but what is it that we have to offer that others don't have? And how do we play that long-term competitive game as a country, as a society? I'd love to see some of the politics taken out of today's debates and really focus on where is the country? Where have we come from? How have we gotten here? And more importantly, where are we going? Because we're in a hyper-competitive world, not just in business, but in society as well. And if we just continue doing exactly what we've been doing for the last 20 or 30 years in this country, we're going to get passed by because people are hungrier than we are out there. And that's where the manufacturing jobs are going. So I don't have an easy solution to this. But I'm not convinced that manufacturing is ever going to really rebuild here and be as strong as it was in the 40s and 50s. But I'm also not at all convinced that America's best days are behind it. You know, we've been through this before. Remember, Japan was going to overtake the United States of America in terms of economic prowess. That never panned out. So I'm not one who believes that there's nothing we can do, that it's inevitable that America's best days are behind us. I really don't believe that. But I also don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out all by myself, and we need some smart strategy professors to help us.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts about all of that. I really appreciate your being with us today and participating in this interview series.